Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News, where I have to say I continue to be very impressed by the Superman fandom. You guys just really are rallying around the hope that someday Henry Cavill will become the Superman you want him to be. Case in point, a lot of the excitement yesterday over Henry Cavill's social media reveal, or supposed reveal, it pretty much was a reveal, of his black suit in the upcoming Justice League movie. Yep, he's not going to stay dead long. And I thought it was interesting that so many people were excited about this because I think it was pretty much a given that he was going to have the black suit on. I mean, they're doing the death of Superman. They're doing it on fast forward, but they're still doing the story, and the next step is for him to don the black suit. And I'm sure that Warner Brothers and Zack Snyder are very eager to get him into a black suit because Hollywood loves superheroes in black suits. They put them in them every chance they can get. And Superman's black suit is actually pretty iconic. It's kind of right up there with Spider-Man's Venom suit. It's not like Batman's, more fun outfits that he often has as an action figure or as a Lego character. But Superman doesn't change his clothes often, but when he does, he goes black. For instance, in the recent New 52, they had two Supermans, and they've kept them for Rebirth. One from the old, comics, the old storylines, and then the new one. And that guy not only had a beard, but he wore the black suit, right? Like if Superman's going to wear something else, he wears black. But speaking of a beard, that's the bigger question to me. I want Henry Cavill to tease whether or not he's going to have the mullet, right? Or not even just so much a mullet, but the long hair. And actually there was recently somebody did some fan art of Henry Cavill with longer hair, and he looked pretty cool, but he still looked pretty upset. And I think that that's the real situation here. Superman has always been a lighter character. One of the reasons that Batman versus Superman as a concept, not the movie, has been effective over the years is that they really are yin and yang. Not only Superman is during the day and Metropolis is like a shining futuristic city, and then Batman fights at night in Gotham, and that's a very, gothic old-time city, but also their personalities are different. And they really kind of, Henry Cavill plays a very lost Superman. As I've said in my coverage of the DCEU, he's someone who doesn't really know who he is, and he's defined by the people around him. First by his father, Pa Kent, until his unfortunate and ridiculous passing. So silly. He's like, don't expose yourself to the world, son. And then 2 years later or something, he does anyway, so he should have just saved his dad. But anyway, and then I think Lois was a big part of defining him after that. I think that's one of the reasons he liked Lois so much, because she was pretty bossy and told him what to do. So I think that what I'd really like to see, besides, forget how he looks, I would like to see Superman change how he acts. I would like to see a Superman who just makes some choices for himself. I don't care what they are. I'd be curious to see actually what Chris Terrio comes up with as those choices. And I'd actually personally like to see him break up with Lois Lane, to be honest with you. I think that I like the way they were portrayed in Batman v Superman as this couple that was so in love with being with each other. He's like, oh, you helped me find my way. And she's like, you're my boy toy. Actually, I think, a pretty good representation of May-December romances when you switch them, particularly where the woman is older, because Amy Adams is older than Henry Cavill. I just think, I thought it was interesting. I think that this Lois and Clark are interesting, but I also think it's time for them to break up. Maybe they could get back together, but I can't believe I'm saying this. I was thinking about this last night. But even though I've never liked the Superman-Wonder Woman relationship in the comics, it seems almost incestuous to me. I could kind of see Henry Cavill and Gal Gadot together as a couple, and I think that this Wonder Woman might be able to help this Superman, come into his own. So we'll see. That would be funny. I think that would be really good, actually. So those are the things that I'm more interested in, the bigger questions. But I love that so many people got excited about the black suit for Justice League, for Henry Cavill to don. I'm glad Henry Cavill's excited about it, and I hope that Warner Brothers gives you guys some Superman DCEU love, because so many people are jonesing for it. There's the demand. Come on, Warner Brothers, supply. All right, so that's the first story of the day. Now, the second story of the day, speaking of supply and demand, it turns out there's a huge demand for R-rated animated movies, and Seth Rogen could not be happier. In fact, he's saying that he not only wants to make Sausage Party 2, but he wants to maybe make more R-rated animated films, just going forward, like they release so many animated movies a year. I think Seth Rogen feels, why not make one of those movies each year or every other year, an R-rated one? And I think if he can keep the budget down, that could be a very effective business model. But more on that in a second, because as some of you have pointed out to me, there are some very disturbing rumors about Sausage Party behind the scenes. But first, Sausage Party 2, he's saying, is that he wants to kind of base it a little bit maybe on Roger Rabbit, or do a Roger Rabbit type R-rated movie, because he says Roger Rabbit is one of his favorite movies of all time. Seth Rogen does, which I think is pretty awesome. Roger Rabbit is a fantastic movie. And just when I'm like, oh, Seth Rogen, you might be too gross for me, he says something like that, where I'm like, I get you, Seth Rogen, we both love Roger Rabbit, you're okay. And that's how he always gets me, and then he grosses me out again. All right, so anyway, I think that an R-rated Roger Rabbit type movie could be very financially lucrative. But how is he keeping the budget down? Well, this is a rumor, and we don't know if Seth Rogen even knows about it, or knew about it. At least he probably knows about it now, but during production. But the rumor is that co-director Greg Tiernan was just a total dictator over the poor animators working at Nitrogen Studios. And the reason this is a rumor is because no one's willing to come forward and officially confirm it, because they like working in animation and they don't want to get blacklisted. But they're anonymously complaining like crazy online. And they're claiming that Greg Tiernan was forcing the animators at Nitrogen Studio to work overtime for free. And if they would work overtime for free, they would be let go. Either their work would be assigned to an animator who was willing to work their work overtime for free, or they would eventually maybe even be fired off of the project. Now, eventually they appealed to Annapurna, the finance company that was behind this, Megan Ellison, Larry Ellison's daughter, who takes her dad's tech money and has funneled it into letting creative people in Hollywood do whatever they want. Sometimes the results are not so good, but she's like a real artistic patron. So when Annapurna found out about this, they paid them the overtime, and they made sure that they were, meals were provided for them, which is what you're supposed to do. However, some animators said that they had to leave, or were forced to leave before the Annapurna situation. They stepped in, and therefore they received actually no credit in the film credits that actually roll at the end of the movie. They're credited on IMDb, but if you actually watch Sausage Party at the end, you don't see their names, even though they worked on it. In some cases, they're saying for over a year. So they're trying to get this fixed and see if maybe they can get on the Blu-ray DVD release credits. We'll see what happens. This is such a bad story that I'm sure that Annapurna and Seth Rogen are investigating. I would be surprised if they used Greg Tiernan again to direct. The animation's very good in Sausage Party, and it's a shame that so many people have such a negative experience about working on the movie, considering their work was so good, and under these conditions, no less. Imagine if they were happy animators, what they could have done. But I would want to continue to make these movies. I think this is something that Sony is definitely going to want to get in on with Seth Rogen, but I would probably not work with Greg Tiernan again if these rumors prove to be true. All right, so speaking of bad publicity for a movie, the third story I want to talk about today is Nate Parker. A couple of you have written to me about this. It's a developing situation with The Birth of a Nation. And, we've talked about the fact that The Birth of a Nation already seems to be the big Oscar winner for this coming year, right? Like Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor. They've already invited Nate Parker to join the Academy before his film has even been screened for the general public. That's amazing. So he was really the golden boy of Hollywood, and already anointed king of this year's award season. And I said, is there anything that could possibly derail this movie? Well, we found it. I think it's really bad and could potentially actually derail the movie. So I'm curious. I'm going to explain the situation to you, but I'm curious how you feel about it. I think at the end of the day, it might still get nominations, but I think that it's unlikely that it will win, because not only the allegation's so serious, but I do not think they're handling it very well on how they're trying to deal with it. So Fox Searchlight, as you might recall, paid millions of dollars, like $17 million, to purchase The Birth of a Nation so they could release it and run its awards campaign, right? So surprise, surprise, they find out that Nate Parker and his co-screenwriter, who he went to college with, were charged 17 years ago with having sex with a woman while she was unconscious in their dorm room. All right, so very bad situation. And so they're trying to get out ahead of this trying to kill it before award season. I think that it's award season is very, winning these awards is very important to a film and to the studio who has the film. And so even if Fox Searchlight can maybe get in front of this, I think that you can bet that their competitors will always be like, isn't that the guy who was charged with, rape, basically? And I think people might, at the end of the day, especially the older Academy voters, might be like, it's going to be really hard for me to give somebody an Oscar, maybe a Golden Globe, but an Oscar who's been charged with rape. Now, let me explain why they're not handling it well. So Nate Parker's doing a lot of industry interviews in the trades, being like, let me talk to you, let me address this head on and get out in front of the situation. But as some people are pointing out, and I agree with this, he is not emphatically claiming his innocence. Oh, it was, because, he had a relationship with this woman before this incident, but it was a problematic situation. And while he was cleared of charges, I think the situation legally went a little bit further with his roommate, the guy who co-wrote The Birth of a Nation. That guy's done for sure. Okay. But anyway, in their interviews, Nate Parker even isn't like, I'm totally innocent. This just shows how on campus sometimes these things can get out of control and there's no protection for guys, right? And us being falsely accused. Nothing like that. Instead, he says, I was cleared of all charges, and that was a long time ago, right? I saw, one interview where he was like, look, I've got sisters, I've got 4 daughters, I have a wife, we have a great relationship, and it's just kind of like, those wonderful relationships you have with women don't negate what you did to this one other woman, right? I guess it's a big question about how do you feel about redemption? How do you feel about second chances? But again, he isn't really, even the way he's discussing it, he's not saying, I don't know, there's just something about it that is rubbing me the wrong way. And so I think that this could really derail the Birth of a Nation's awards chances. And I'm curious, how do you feel about it? And how do you feel about the movie? This has not been a good month for Nate Parker because he was called out on social media for the reveal that his wife actually happens to be white, and making this strong movie about the slave rebellion and rights for black people in America and how they're treated. And then I think a lot of people felt that he was a bit of a sellout. It's a little bit like what happened with Michael B. Jordan and his discussion about dating white women, etc. These things matter, to be perfectly honest with you, to the black community, or a large part of the black community, and they do affect your box office. For instance, Denzel Washington, you'll notice, hardly ever dates a white woman in any of his movies for exactly that reason. I think that back with the Pelican Brief, a lot of his black female fans didn't react so well to him having a situation with Julia Roberts. And, I think occasionally since then, Flight, for instance, he'll do it a couple of times now. But for a long time there, he was like, yeah, I've got to make sure that I don't alienate my core fan base that really does a lot to drive my fandom. So anyway, those are the 3 stories of the day. Now, I have a viewer question here that I think is really important because I get asked this occasionally. And I feel bad because I think this answer is going to be a little depressing to some people, but you should hear it because I don't want anyone to waste their time, all right? So this comes from Kyle A.S., and Kyle says, hey, Grace, I have a question. How would someone like me pitch a movie to DC or Marvel? I emailed you, but I don't know if you use that email anymore or not. Thanks for your time. This is the best way, by the way, to ask me a question here in Twitter. Thanks for your time, and thanks for making your episodes that make me laugh. Kyle, you're so sweet. I feel so bad that I don't have better news for you. All right, so here's the situation. Nobody who does not have experience in the industry can pitch a movie to DC or Marvel. You just simply cannot do it. They will not even take your phone call or open your envelope. Nobody will really in Hollywood. You need to have some level of representation, or you need to get on one of those, the blacklist, or get into a writer's program. That's how you can get into Hollywood without representation. But DC or Marvel, they're not going to take, even the comic book companies, if you want to pitch a comic book, they're not going to take a pitch from a new person. So if you want to work in Hollywood or in any business, I think it's really important to remember that you need to take a strong examination of the inroads into that industry and follow those paths. There are usually a couple of different inroads into an industry, particularly Hollywood. So, there's not just one path, but you got to take one of the ones that has kind of been set up. So with working in Hollywood, you need to, you have to either go to school to study for it, or you need to, get an internship, or you need to get a job as like a production assistant, get into the business. For instance, sometimes screenwriters will come from the publicity department, right? There are directors. Ava DuVernay, for instance, used to handle outreach for films to the Black community. That's how she got her start. So there are lots of different things that you can do. And then maybe sometimes you can change careers once you're in there, or maybe you might find that the career that you've come upon is actually more rewarding than you thought, and you're going to stay where you are. So you have to understand, though, that the big companies, for legal purposes, just simply aren't going to take any pitches from anyone that doesn't have an agent or a manager and some stuff in the past. Nicole Perlman, though, is a good example of someone who came from the Disney Writers Program and went right over to Marvel. So you can apply to those programs, and the programs that I recommend to you are Disney and Warner Brothers both have new talent programs now. Warner Brothers just started theirs with a particular emphasis on diversity. And then also, you can submit scripts to the blacklists. You have to pay to do that. Also, the Academy that hands out the Oscars, they also have a Nichols Fellowship writing competition that you can enter for that. So that's the best way. And also, these competitions and these things aren't going to want to see your DC or Marvel pitch either. You have to make a smaller film. You have to write something, think of it like a college essay, right? A college essay doesn't want to hear how much you want to go to Harvard or how much like the University of Michigan means to you. They want like a life experience. Think about the award season. That's the kind of stuff that appeals to the industry, right? That's what think of like a good example is Rick Famuyiwa, who's doing the Flash movie, right? Where did he come from? He came from making dope. So go make your dope. Go write your dope, and then eventually you might get to DC or Marvel. That could be your end game. That could be your goal, but it's not where you're going to start. So Kyle, I hope that's helpful to you. I hope that's helpful to anyone, and hopeful to anyone who's interested in working in the industry on blockbusters. Just realize where you need to start. Think about where Gareth Edwards started. Think about where Rian Johnson started. Think about Colin Trevorrow on Jurassic World. Emily Carmichael, who's working her way up. You have to take a look at the directors you like and see what their paths were, and that's how you're likely to enter the industry as well. All right, and same for any other job. Look at similar, screenwriters if that's what you're interested in, etc. Actors, take a look, and there's a lot to be gleaned from study. Don't copy somebody directly, but there's a lot to be gleaned from seeing how recent people whose careers you admire and want to follow got their start, and etc. All right, so thank you everybody for tuning in. That's today's episode of Morning Movie News. Please write down below today's top 3 stories, your thoughts on the viewer question, anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow, and any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.